Hello everyone, and I've been wanting to make this video for a couple of days now. I finally got around to it. But the point I want to make in this video is that something that we've been talking about a lot on this channel, and I just sort of realized something new about it, is that the sort of lust for social status or popularity, I see now that it really has to be a progressive disease. In other words, it's like a drug. You're not going to do just a little bit of it. You're going to get hooked on it, and you're going to need more and more and more and more and more. So if you're going to say, I'm just going to do a little bit, of just, social status stuff, like, you're going to have to pull the plug on it and say, no, stop, because, like, if you continue on with that, it's just going to grow. You can't just have a little bit of this in your life. You can't have just a little bit of a lust for popularity in your life. So in other words, when I say lust for social status, what I mean is intentionally filling yourself with a desire for people to see you in a certain way, to have a certain status in society, for what others think of you. So if that is a consuming, powerful desire, a key primary desire, maybe the primary desire in your life, what I'm going to do is defend the point that this will be a progressive disease. This will get worse and worse. And what I mean is, the grass will always be greener on the other side by just the very nature of the thing. And so the reason why that is because you'll never really feel like you ever have it. And I'm going to defend why that is with 3 reasons. But the point that I want to make, first of all, is why this is progressive is because you never really have it. And so the only way to resolve the fact that this is the most important thing in your life, or one of the most important things in your life, but you never actually have it, ever, is to place it in the future and become sort of a futurist and say, I'll have it tomorrow when I get X. When I achieve X, when I have this thing, then I'll have my social status. And see, the problem is like, you never have it. But it's the most important thing in your life, so therefore it's always in the future. It's always over the rainbow, over the hill, around the turn. One a little more, go a little further, do a little more, and then I'll have that fixed, what I need. Okay, so if you understand the general concept, let's go into some of the reasons why this is. First of all, the first reason is Clinton won the polls. And what I mean by that is, before this last election in November 2016, Hillary Clinton looked like a shoo-in to win according to the polls. But in reality, Donald Trump won when people actually came out to vote. Now, the reason why that is because you just didn't sample the right people. You didn't sample a good sample of America. In other words, like, the way polls work is you call like 1,000 people or maybe 2,000 people and ask them who they're voting for, or you ask, a bunch of people, but not everyone that's going to vote. It's not like the same as voting. You just you try to randomly pick a sample at random, and then hopefully that's going to be representative of what everyone actually thinks. But it's just kind of a random sample picked out of the larger basket of everyone. The problem with that is you can pick a random sample that's not all that random. So like, if you were to pick, 10 people or 1,000 people all from New York City, it would make it seem like, oh, Clinton's a shoo-in to win. But that's not really representative of what everyone thinks. So the problem with social status is that there's 7 billion people on this planet. So you can't possibly know where you stand in that. It's too many people for you to even make an assessment. So what people do is they look at their little corner of the woods, their little neck of the woods. And the problem is that is a very random sample. Who's to say that these people, are very representative of who you are as a person? So if you're trying to measure who you are based on a very specific sample of people, you may get some people, that it's not a very accurate method for polling, humanity. In other words, so that's the first thing. In other words, if all you care about is how you measure up in society, but if you judge that based off your little world, your little scene, then you never really know for sure if your judgment of yourself based on what society thinks of you is accurate, because you picked a very bad sample, a very specific sample. And essentially, why did you pick this sample instead of another sample? So what if you live somewhere else and these people might think completely different of you because you just pick your sample at random? What if you move? then your entire world of who you are and what's most important to you completely degrades and changes. And essentially, it's all just based on where you happen to live, which is like just a very random thing. It's like saying, I'm from Georgia, so I support UGA football. Why? Like, why is that the best team ever, to you? Like, you just happen to be born here. You just happen to be born around these people, so what they think is the most important thing ever. Okay? But you could have happened to be born anywhere, and then, like, you would have had a completely different social status because you would have had a completely different society in which you lived. That's one problem. You can think of it another way. Let's say, a simple example, let's say you work out at, like, a gym, and you're the biggest, strongest guy at the gym, and you just walk around, I'm Mr. Tough, and nobody's as awesome as me. And then somebody new from out of town moves to town, shows up, and he's bigger and stronger than you. And completely, that one guy completely destroyed everything because your world was a fabrication. And it's just you picked a small subset of people and made yourself the top dog of something that may not matter in the end. You may be the best of the losers, in other words. So it's kind of like the way private schools essentially separate off from the public schools, and it's so like the kids who, in a lot of ways, like, who aren't as good at sports and who can't make it at the public school can make it at and then they're the state champs of their special little league they created where they can be the champs. I heard a funny story from my dad a long time ago. There was like a bunch of people who had graduated from public high school in Atlanta got together and made like a private school team that went around, and it was like a fake team, but they went around just beating up and dominating like football teams of like private school kids. But anyway, you get the gist of the point that I'm making. All right. So number 2 is devalue those who know you best. And so in other words, like, if you're primarily concerned with your social status, then that will take precedence over your like close personal friends. And actually, you can increase your social status by people believing that they're your close personal friend, and they'll think more highly of you. So in essence, you have to kind of branch out and try to make a lot of groups of people into your close personal friends. And it gets difficult because what you're doing is you are placing more value on what people, the larger group of people, the larger community thinks than the people closest to you. And the problem is that the people closest to you, they know you better. They have better understanding and better knowledge and better information about you than the guy over there who So in other words, social status largely is dependent on not what the people directly in your life think, but what the more extended group of people who don't know you that well think. And the other problem is you can improve your social status by making your close personal friends think that you have, you're not that into them. So, in other words, it becomes difficult to even have close personal friends because you have to like branch out. And then there's this problem of like you may be motivated to like use people, and make them think, that you're their close friend, and then all of a sudden you forgot all about them, like your life's too exciting and too cool, yada yada. So like the fundamental problem here, that I want to make is that essentially there is a devaluing of the people who know you best. And so, again, the point we're making with the last point and this point is that you never really know, you don't have a good, accurate assessment of who you are and even what your social status is. Because the people who know you best, their opinion of you is less important than the people who don't know you as well. So in other words, chasing after social status as this primary lust in your life is sort of a vain, futile thing. You never really feel like you ever have it. And the third point is kind of obvious. You can't ever really be sure of what people think. They could always be, telling you things that aren't true, or, especially the larger extended community. It's very difficult to know what people really think of you. And you pick this small sample size, to make it easier. But in reality, that sample size is your community, and like it's very arbitrary, very random. So it doesn't tell you much about yourself. It it could be, it could look like Clinton was, the winner in a certain little town in New York, where, but you live in a certain little town. You know what I mean? So, and even if you're rich and famous, there's always those people out there. There's a lot of people out there, that don't like you, and even rich and famous people tend to like have to surround themselves with their little yes men. I guess that's what I've heard. But the point is, you can't really know what people think. You try your best to pick a small sample of people, but that sample is not really picked at random. It's not like you got one guy from Alaska and one guy from Florida and one guy from Nevada, and and try to pick it at random. You picked a certain community, and so they may all be biased in a certain way. That's not a good way to poll the world, and it's not a good way to judge your own social status. So in other words, my point is you never really know what your social status is, because you can't know what people think, even in your little small non-random community. Okay, so that is the point I wanted to make to you. I guess there's nothing more to say other than a word of warning on this, is that I think people have a tendency to think that it's okay to like pursue popularity just a little bit. And the point I want to make to you is that you'll never feel like you ever have it. You can lie to yourself or delude yourself into thinking that you have it, but if you're honest with yourself, you'll have to say, I don't really know if I have it. And so if you're going to make it the primary goal in your life, but also be honest that you never really have it, then the only way for you to mentally resolve that dilemma between those two problems is to place the goal in the future. And it will always be in the future. You're over the next hill, around the next turn, go a little further, do a little more. And so you're always going to want to cross into other realms and other things that, and break boundaries and do things that, and go and change who you are, basically, and go further and do more. And so you're not going to be able to be a very principled person, a person who has beliefs and values that, like, this is what matters to me, because you're always going to have to change them to pursue this thing that you can never get. And so there's always going to be a need to, like, I was this person and this is all that mattered to me, and then all of a sudden I was this person and this was all that mattered to me, and it's going to be this thing that just keeps you pushing you further and further and further along. And so that's my point that I want to make to you. And I'm not going to take any longer than that to say it. So thank you for your time. Please check out my other videos if you have time. But I hope this made sense. We'll see you next time.